welcome to episode 3 of the Houghton Heroes Fantasy Football League videocast, brought to you by our friends at Sacco Cream. Sacco Cream, same old catchphrase, same great relief. Sacco Cream. Now, before we get to our videocast today, which is full of predictions, recaps, and a daily dime, I'm going to give everyone an overview of kind of how week 1 went. And first off, it seemed as if every tight end played like they were Jimmy Graham. In fact, 11 tight ends scored 10 fantasy points or more, except Zach Sudfeld. Sorry, Kyle. But I'm here to tell you that I don't think that this is going to continue. I definitely think that the better players are going to play well, then the worser players are going to play worse. And I look for a decrease in number going forward. Second of all, the Eagles and the Broncos look extremely good this year. I would feel very, very confident in my team if I had one or even two players on my team from either of those teams, except if I had Eric Decker. I don't think he's going anywhere. But besides him, I expect them to put up big numbers this year and be pretty happy if they're on my team. And third, I noticed there was a lot of parity in week 1, and I definitely think regression to the mean is going to take an effect. Like I said, lots of parity. We had Jared Cook going off for over 20 fantasy points as a tight end. I don't see that happening anymore. Sorry, Kavi. And definitely Kelvin Johnson. I'm not looking for him to put up 3 points anymore. Like I said, regression to the mean. I think we can get used to him putting up double digit again. And I definitely think the league will average out in the long run. And with that said, let's recap the action of the week 1 scoreboard. Starting off, Kavi took the early lead in the standings, beating Andrew 144-62. All I can say about this matchup is wow, I did not see Kavi coming in this week and over doubling Andrew's score, but definitely it was a matchup of over and underperforming. For Andrew's team, Marshawn Lynch and Stephen Ridley definitely put him in a hole early, but when you start Green Bay's defense against the 49ers, it's definitely a mistake. It kind of begs the question, is anyone even paying attention in Camp Whoop-Ass? Don't think so, because I don't think it would have mattered at all because of Kavi's 144 points, like I said before. Hats off, but Victor Cruz getting 3 TDs and Jared Cook going off for over 20 fantasy points, I don't see it happening farther on, but his team is looking pretty solid so far. Definitely bright for the future, but I don't think it's 144 points bright. Second off, Carl beat Steve in a close matchup, 129-144. Anytime you score 114, you don't think you're going to lose, as was the case for Steve. But it was a stretch starting Mike Ingram. At one point, it really hurt you, didn't it? Kelvin Johnson, there's nothing you can do about that. Like I said, we're used to him scoring double-digit in fantasy points. I think that he'll get back to that in the next coming weeks. But I think Vernon Davis will be a stud this year, so you definitely look out for him. Your bench will help you out too. You know, maybe starting Matthews this week. Oh wait, you just traded him. Good luck with Mendenhall. His knee doesn't exactly feel right at this point. But anyway, McCoy definitely made the difference for Carl. You know, number 2 fantasy running back this week, drafted in the 2nd round. I mean, that's a steal in my opinion. Eli surprised us with 3 picks and still scoring a plethora of fantasy points for Carl. Larry also had a big game, and I think we need to get used to it. Larry Fitzgerald with a new quarterback, a better quarterback now. I think he's going to get more balls thrown his way. He's going to catch some more TDs. Like I said, get used to it. Carl has a strong bench as well, and I think that'll help him in the long run. And definitely this matchup came up to his studs, and Carl won via his studs when they came through for him in the end. Jake beat Simon 106-56, starting strong. Jake is always a perennial favorite for the Sacco Award. And I gotta say, this is a wow second time. Definitely underperforming on Simon's team. Looked better on paper. Wilson and Dez, you know, one game hurt you a lot. Sunday night was not favorable to Simon. And he had the only tight end who did not score like a bajillion points, it seemed. It didn't matter, though. Jake had a pretty good team, but I'm not going to discuss it after he tried to pull that trade with Kyle. I understand you think it was a good trade for your team, but no one else did. Not even Kyle. So, Jake, check yourself before you wreck yourself. The next matchup was Kyle beating myself. He beat me by 5 points, but it definitely felt a lot closer than 5. Spiller and Dwayne Bowe really hurt my chances for the win this week. I really started off limp-dicked, as Kavi would say. I overcame that. Maybe I can expect the rest that I got from the rest of the team, but I hope Cam Newton definitely performs better than he did week 1. Like I said, we overcame a sluggish start to make the matchup interesting, but Demaryius Thomas seemed to make the difference in this matchup for Kyle. Definitely seemed to win the matchup before the matchup even got started. 28 points really put the hurt on my team, set Kyle off to an early lead, and he never lost it. Sudfield, again, didn't help. A big old goose egg up there. I think he's going to make some changes at tight end, but we'll see. And again, Jake with the dumb trade sending Julio Jones to Kyle. I think that's going to make his team very, very strong, and I don't see him losing more than 1 or 2 the entire year. And finally, Holly beat Drew in the Never Say Never matchup game by 3 points, 119 to 116. And Drew, just like I said with Steve, when you score 116 or 114 points, you definitely don't expect to lose. But Roddy White's injury definitely cost you. He said he was healthy and he was playing, but he later in the week admitted he was out there only for a decoy. It was another overperforming day for tight ends. Owen Daniels with 2 touchdowns. Again, I don't see this happening for him in a primarily running offense, but AJ Green, he is all sorts of amazing. In my opinion, he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver this year. The dude is an absolute stud. We can only hope that T. Rich doesn't die trying on your team, and hopefully he can pull you out of an 0-1 start. And speaking of Holly, recapping her week 1 performance on the Sacco Moisturizing Hotline, the owner of the Hernandez Pistol Whippers, Holly Carroll. And now joining me on the Sacco Moisturizing Hotline is the only girl in our league this year, Holly, coming straight off of her week 1 win. Holly, how's it going?
Going pretty good. I'm having a pretty good fantasy week.
It definitely was a good week 1 for you, and I must say congratulations on your win. Do you have anything that you would want to say to the haters in our league?
First off, I think I'd like to say I told you so, fuckers. Told you that it would work out, and that I'll be pretty set. I'm not worried.
You're not worried, but I think a couple of people were coming into to week 1 worried about how you would do against Drew. You won by 3 points. You got the award for the closest win in week 1. Would you attribute this win to maybe it was luck that you had Peyton Manning and a couple other studs on your team for the week, Adrian Peterson, or do you attribute this to your draft style at all?
I do attribute part of this to my draft style and the way that I did trade for Peterson, who was a big part also of my win. It wasn't just all Peyton and the Wes Welker combo. But I did have a lucky hand this week since I do have Gronkowski still on the bench. And I do have my other running back that I plan to use still on the bench as well.
So you're saying it's a little bit of both then?
A little bit of both, but I think Peyton would have had a good game either way. I think that even though he got 46 points, I imagine that he would have been in the 25-30 range. Also, Drew would have beaten me if he had switched one of his wide receivers into the game.
It's definitely pretty lucky for your side. And since we did mention your draft strategy, I know you talked about it a lot during our draft, and you said it was prevalent in the trade for the draft picks with Kyle. What was your draft strategy going in? I know a lot of us are curious.
Well, I really wanted to go for Adrian Peterson, of course. Of many of my years, except one that I've played, I've always had AP, and he usually led to a winning season for me. And I was kind of betting more on Chris Ivory, but he's kind of turned into a disappointment. And then my defense strategy was actually a huge mistake, and was due to the fact that I was looking at strategies online and accidentally clicked the wrong thing.
Yeah, a lot of us found it curious that you drafted the Bears defense quite early in the draft. I think it was a 5th or 6th round, definitely higher than all the other defenses were going. But coming into the draft, week 1, a lot of people feel that their team is good, but after week 1, many of us find out that our team definitely isn't good as is as good as we thought. How do you think you balance the expectations of your team coming into week 1 and then the reality that sets in after week 1?
I didn't think that my team would be as strong in the first couple of weeks as I was expecting in October when some of my injured players come off the bench. So I was pretty pleased. It exceeded my expectations. I wasn't expecting Peyton to do that well, even though I expected him to do well. He just blew me completely out of the water.
That's always definitely good to have coming in a player that exceeds your expectations. And you finished 3rd last year. And so speaking of expectations, you finished 3rd in the league last year. And how does that affect your expectations of how you're going to finish this year?
Well, I won't be Sacco this year because, I did have some early round picks and my team's just not god-awful like some others, like some whoop-ass people that we might be talking about.
Not going to mention names.
Yeah, not going to mention names. I don't expect my team to be as good as the auto draft would have picked for me.
That is definitely understandable. And you are a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan. They had a great win last night. Is there and given that their 3 studs scored at least 20 points, well, except for Deshaun Jackson, but is there a Eagles player that you don't want to see on the opponent coming at you during any of the weeks?
Well, it's actually really interesting that the person I am playing against next does have McCoy, who I'm most fearful of. I think that he's a formidable force and could possibly be the end of me.
Number 2 running back coming into week 2. Is Carl the team that you fear the most? He is your matchup, but is he the person you don't want to face?
Oh no, not at all. He's a scary guy, but there's one other person in this league that just makes me shiver in my boots whenever I think about going against him.
I have a feeling it's not Jake, but tell me who it is.
I have a feeling that I think Kyle Krim will be a very formidable force this year if he could actually, put the right people on his team.
Well, it seems that if he can't do that via the draft, he just rapes everyone in trades, by the way. And speaking of Carl, we kind of got off topic, but your matchup this week is against Carl. He is 1-0. He beat Steve last week. How do you feel about that matchup?
Well, I think that, anyone that would touch my man is asking for an ass whooping. So, I'm going to open a can of whoop ass on him and avenge my sweetheart.
Well said, Holly. Well said. I thank you for the time. I know you're up at school, you're studying hard. And again, thank you for the time. Thanks for interviewing today.
You're welcome. Have fun.
Again, I'd like to thank Holly for taking the time and talking with us today, but I still don't see her team winning many more games when she's starting Chris Ivory, Eric Decker, and Torrey Smith. Her bench is full of hurt players. I don't see any way she can come out of this hole. Started from the trade she made day 1, but she is 1-0, more than what half the league can say. And now it's time for a segment I would like to call Sharon's Weekly Wisecrack. Without further ado, here's Sharon. Hi, Mom. How's it going today?
Hey, Dan. Good.
What have you got for us?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Orange.
Orange who?
Orange, you're glad I'm here.
We are so glad you're here, and thank you for the daily dime. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Mom, for that witty bit of humor. And to finish up our video cast this week, I'm going to give a prediction for week 2. And hopefully everything can work out the way I see it. Starting off, back from her week 1 win, Holly will play Carl, a battle of 1-0 teams. The story will be, can Carl's team avoid a letdown? I think the only way he can lose is if his team underperforms. A big game from Morris and Fitz is definitely, I think, in the books. Like I said, I think Fitzgerald will overperform this year than what many people think. I see him having a huge year. And I don't see good games besides Peyton and AP for Holly. I think Carl wins this by 17 points or more, moving him to 2-0. Next, Andrew faces myself. A battle of the opposite of 1-0. We are 0-1 to start out the season. I think it comes down to whose running backs don't disappoint. Lynch and Spiller both have hard matchups. We'll see who can come out on top there. And no waiver claims from Andrew Benda this week. Can't say I'm surprised. I don't think he's that invested. Will Wallace get the ball after his rant this week? I don't think that the Colts will allow the deep ball to be thrown very much this week. I think he's going to have a very soft game for Benda. And will Dwayne Bowe let me down again? 3 points hurt me in week 1. He's playing the Cowboys again this week. Not a good feeling. We'll see if he stays in my lineup. I have myself winning this close matchup. I think I'm going to win by 7 points, moving me to 1-1. Kavi and Drew play together. The top team in week 1 was obviously Kavi. Will it continue? We saw about the best we can get from Drew, I feel like, in 114 points. But we're all hoping that Kavi can cool down from his torrid start. I think the tight ends won't be much of a help this week. Like I said, Owen Daniels and Jared Cook, don't see much from them going forward. Don't think they're going to be much of a help. The winner, I think, is decided on who has a bigger game between Charles and Marshall or T. Rich and A.J. Green. I think those two duos are going to battle it out, and whoever can amass the most points between those two players on each team will come out winning. I know projections don't mean anything. It's just a computer, whatever you want to call it, and I don't really follow them. I don't believe them. Therefore, I consider Drew the underdog based off of his given week 1 and obviously the curse that he's under. I think Drew pulls the upset over Kavi in this one, winning by a close 4 points. The next matchup in our league would be Jake versus Steve. They're both coming off big trades to their lineup, so let's see if they'll help. I see a big game coming from Kelvin Johnson and Hakeem Nicks this week for Steve. I think they're really going to help him in this one, and I also think it'll counteract big games from Randall Cobb and Cecil Shorts. I see all 4 of those wide receivers having big games this week coming through for their owners. I think Steven Jackson underperforms versus St. Louis, as well as Jason Witten, the tight end for Jake, and I think this makes the difference in the matchup. I see Vernon Davis, that is, with a big game, along with Aaron Rodgers for Steve, along with Mega and Hakeem Nicks. I think Steve gets the win by 11 points. And our final matchup is Simon versus week 1 winner Kyle. Kyle's coming off the big trade from Jake. I think it vastly improves his trade. He is acquiring wide receiver Julio Jones, basically from Marcus Colston. I think Colston is way overvalued, so I think he definitely got the better side of that trade. Talking about Simon's team, I think that the Dez Bryant foot injury is going to hinder him into week 2, making him have a slow game. I also think week 1 breakout performer Anquan Bolden is also going to have a slow game. I think teams are going to game plan for him more, allowing for Vernon Davis to have a big game, like I said. Also having a slow game, I predict, is CJ2K Chris Johnson. I think he's going to have a slow game, but I don't think it's going to matter that much. Despite having no standout performers this week, I think from Kyle's team, he's still going to beat Simon by 9 points. So wrapping up my picks again for week 2, I have Carl over Holly, Dan beating Benda, Drew over Kavi, Steve over Jake, and Kyle over Simon. We'll see if they come true. Thanks for watching, and everyone, good luck in week 2.